Right, so Benjamin Netanyahu's empire is crumbling as Iran's latest strikes on Israel in retaliation for yet more Israeli overnight strikes hit at the heart not just of Israel's war machine, targeting air bases and military headquarters and installations, but also vital infrastructure whilst they were at it. The sheer scale of the latest Iranian salvos have also flagged up an even greater problem for Netanyahu in the immediate term. Having started a fight with Iran, he clearly thought he'd either win fast or the US would come quickly to his side, as Israel's air defences may very soon be no more. They're burning through interceptor missiles that they can't replace fast enough, and despite orders to lock down the Israeli population and a blackout of state media to keep people in Israel in the dark, social media continues to report the scenes of absolute carnage from Israel, whilst hundreds are now fleeing the country in small boats to Cyprus. All of this, and Iran are currently claiming their strikes thus far are still only warnings, and more punitive strikes are yet to come. Well, given the damage they've wrought on Israel so far, that this latest strike also included the first use of an all-new surprise for Israel, and with more surprises still promised, what exactly does an Iranian strike that they mean to actually punish with look like? And is Netanyahu, in the middle of a nightmare he can't get out of now, foolish enough to try and find out? Right, so Israel is currently reeling under the most intense and sustained assault it has ever experienced from Iran, possibly from anyone in its 77-year history. With Operation True Promise 3 having entered its 10th and 11th phases now, Iranian missile and drone attacks have crippled key military intelligence, industrial and symbolic targets deep inside Israeli territory. These strikes have gone far beyond previous patterns of regional tit for tat, marking a turning point in the conflict and exposing the severe vulnerabilities in Israel's much vaunted defence infrastructure. For Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, this situation has spiralled into a full-blown nightmare now. As the cost of initiating unprovoked attacks on Iran becomes clearer, not to mention it's costing them $300 million a day, so too does the collapse of Israeli deterrence and any pretense of military superiority at all. One of the most significant blows over the last 24 hours came with the successful Iranian missile strike on the headquarters of Unit 8200, Israel's elite cyber and signals intelligence agency located near Tel Aviv, leaving it in absolute ruins. Unit 8200 is central to Israel's surveillance and electronic warfare capabilities. You can compare it to the NSA in the United States, or I suppose GCHQ here in the UK is the closest analogy. But Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, has confirmed that this strike was in retaliation for Israel's attack on Iran's IRIB state television headquarters in Tehran the day before, footage of which went absolutely viral across social media and has turned their news anchor Sahara Mami into a global symbol of resistance as she continued her broadcast even as the IRIB building was still on fire. By targeting such a symbolic and tactical asset, Iran has directly targeted the very core of Israel's intelligence apparatus, shattering any illusion that Israel can strike with impunity and remain untouched, and will severely impact any shady cyber operations Israel may have been engaged in. Simultaneously, Iranian forces bombed key air bases in southern Israel, including the Hatzarim and Netzarim air base, from which Israel has launched drone operations and long-range missile attacks on Iranian facilities, as well as where they launched their jets from towards Iran. Satellite imagery and leaked footage posted on social media, despite Israel's continuing media blackout, shows extensive damage to aircraft hangars, fuel depots and radar installations. Israel's efforts to suppress images of destruction are proven ineffective. Amateur footage continues to emerge online of Iranian missiles impacting and cutting through those flailing air defences that were once talked up so much, laying bare the scale of Iranian precision and Israeli vulnerability. In another devastating and highly significant blow, Iranian missiles hit the Gilot suburbs of Tel Aviv, home to what many international analysts believe is one of the most clandestine organisations on the planet, because in those residential suburbs sits the headquarters of Mossad, Israel's foreign intelligence service. What makes this strike especially damning is that Mossad's headquarters is one of those state assets that has been deliberately, intentionally placed amongst residential areas, showing Israel to be a state that uses its own civilians as de facto human shields. That Tel Aviv is essentially human shield city, as I've called it before, and which casts another light on the fact Israel won't let any of its own people leave the country, allegedly for their own safety. But how is it keeping them safe? By keeping them in the line of fire. It's more likely Israel is just hanging on to its human shields. Certainly seems that way, doesn't it? One of the most symbolically charged attacks came when Iran missiles reduced the Weizmann Institute of Science south of Tel Aviv to rubble. This institution has allegedly strong links to Israel's military-industrial complex and is believed to contribute to Israel's nuclear research and was hit by a barrage of precision-guided munitions. Footage has shown fires engulfing labs and administrative buildings. Iran described the strike as a direct message against Israel's scientific contributions to military aggression. And given Israel strikes against Iran's nuclear and scientific research as well, this seems a very on-the-nose target in that respect. In what the IRGC is calling the most intense wave of attacks so far against Israel, hundreds of missiles and drones were launched in coordinated salvos across multiple Israeli cities, including Tel Aviv, Haifa, Ashdod, and Beersheba. An excerpt from Press TV on this reading. The latest wave of the retaliatory operation, which began late on Friday in response to the Israeli regime's brutal aggression against the Islamic Republic, commenced at approximately 1:30 a.m. Iran time, despite heavy media censorship imposed by the Zionist regime. Numerous videos surfaced on social media showing the skies over Tel Aviv and Haifa lit up by a barrage of long-range advanced Iranian missiles, breaching Israel's three-tiered missile interceptors. Several of the missiles, some of them being used for the first time, hit their intended targets with precision, including military and intelligence sites belonging to the regime. Images circulating on social media platforms showed plumes of smoke and fire billowing up in the air at various sensitive and strategic Israeli military intelligence centers. Israeli settlers, according to some Israeli media reports, were angry at the so-called Home Command about sirens not blaring on time to allow them to hide in underground bunkers. There's a few things in that excerpt that I'm going to pick up on there over the rest of this video, but firstly, the message of missiles being used for the first time is particularly relevant. An all-new, nasty surprise for Israel as this was, because amongst the missiles fired was Iran's Fattah hypersonic missile, which Tehran claims can evade all existing air defense systems. Fattah, which means the opener, is a precision-guided two-stage solid-fueled missile with a range of 1,400 kilometers and a terminal speed of between Mach 13 to 15, which Iran unveiled in June of 2023. This speed, along with movable nozzles that allow the missile to maneuver in all directions, both in and out of the Earth's atmosphere, makes it immune to interception by all existing anti-missile systems, it is claimed, according to military experts. And it certainly seems to have proven that. But then we've been watching many an Iranian missile get through the Iron Dome, haven't we? Other missiles and drones simultaneously struck petroleum storage facilities in Haifa. The Bezan complex got struck again. Having been shut down temporarily after strikes the other day, it is now completely offline, shutting down Israel's largest oil refinery and halting the production of 60% of Israel's diesel and nearly half of its petrol output, gasoline output. Not only causing significant shortages for civilian use, but that could cripple Israel's domestic logistics and military resupply chains for weeks. As the intensity of the strikes grows, Israel's internal stability is rapidly eroding with it. Commercial flights have been grounded by government decree, and land border checkpoints are under military lockdown. As I've spoken about before, some have been trying to get out of Israel despite the government restrictions on their movements to reach Cyprus by boat to escape from the carnage. Israeli news outlet Haaretz have called it the Escape Flotilla now. An excerpt of their coverage stating that the marina in Herzliya has recently taken on the atmosphere of a makeshift terminal. Starting at 7 in the morning, people begin to arrive, mostly alone, some in couples, a few with families, dragging trolleys and scanning the docks for the yachts scheduled to carry them to Cyprus, and from there to anywhere but here. Facebook groups dedicated to sea-based exits show that hundreds of people are now trying to leave Israel this way. And where there is demand, there are always those ready to supply, for a price. In Herzliya, as well as in other marinas like Haifa and Ashkelon, owners of small yachts are organising trips with groups of no more than 10 passengers. On that particular morning in Herzliya, at least 100 people were preparing to set sail. The Population and Immigration Authority has not yet been able to assess the scale of the phenomenon. Literally hundreds of Israelis are now doing this, fleeing by private yachts and fishing boats to Cyprus. It's a small boat invasion on Cyprus, as some in the media, especially here in the UK, might put it, circumventing state controls, as that does. Doesn't say a lot for their faith in their national leadership, does it? And it's a story getting precious little coverage, again trying to play down what is going on in Israel, to control the narrative as the Israeli government is trying to do. So it's notable that Haaretz have published this piece, in fact. Bomb shelters are filled to capacity in nearly every major city now as well. But even in a time of heightened fear, Israeli racism is playing a part too. Due to the fact these shelters are filling up, Israeli citizens are increasingly barring Palestinian residents of Israel from entering the shelters, claiming they are not meant for them. This blatant act of apartheid inside so-called safe zones underscores the depraved way of thinking within Israel, even during a crisis. Some in the media might call it the sign of a fracturing in their society, but this is literally what Israeli society is built on. This is what their society is. White supremacy, colonialism, and racist ideological claims to land they don't have over a people they look down on and despise because it is actually their land by rights. Iran's onslaught has for days been overwhelming the Iron Dome and David's Sling air defense systems, the Arrow 3 air defense system, which are no longer able to intercept the sheer volume of incoming projectiles, if they ever could to begin with, really. But there's an underlying reason for that too, which I found rather fascinating. Because according to reports, and allegedly confirmed by Israeli insiders who've been speaking off the record to various European media outlets, anonymous sources and all of that, Israel may run out of interceptors entirely within days if the current pace of Iranian missile barrages continues, and there's no sign of them stopping, is there? This fascinated me because I thought of all the arms shipments Israel have been continuing to receive over the last year or so, certainly from the US, why have interceptors not been coming in sufficient number? Are offensive missiles being so prioritised now? Because these same reports have cited an interceptor shortage since Iran's first retaliation against Israel that was more than a year ago now. So this vulnerability is not a new one, and yet Netanyahu still chose to make war on Iran despite that anyway. It's deranged, and he hasn't considered public safety at all, clearly. The psychological toll of watching Iranian missiles explode across cities that Israelis once considered untouchable and secure, that air defences unbeatable, is becoming evident. So news getting out about interceptor shortages is going to enrage and scare many people. Every siren, every shockwave brings panic. Every social media leak of burning buildings and military assets in ruins is a fresh humiliation for Netanyahu's government and an even bigger headache for him. A nightmare unfolding that he's brought on himself by his own hand. Desperately wanting Donald Trump to help him fight Iran now, to get him out of this hole he's now in. Iranian officials insist that all attacks so far have been defensive responses to Israeli aggression and should be seen as warnings, having stated they haven't even begun punitive measures yet, which is mind-boggling and really does make you wonder what else they can bring to bear and what Iranian punishment actually does look like. And do we really want to know? As demonstrated by the successful deployment of the Fattah missile, though, Iran has proven its ability to reach deep into Israeli territory with minimal response time, and they have said they've still got more surprises that haven't been seen yet. In a predictable escalation, though, especially with Netanyahu begging him and pulling on his trouser leg to help him go to war and save Israel for him and save him from himself. The overbearing orange oaf that is the US President Donald Trump has inserted himself into the narrative by threatening Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, with assassination because they know where he is, apparently, and they have simply chosen not to do so yet, and that Iran should surrender. Well, the response was swift and unequivocal, though, with Khamenei warning that any US military intervention would be met with retaliation, unlike anything seen in the region's history. Iran's confidence is backed not only by its advanced military arsenal, but also by the international support it is garnering. So while Western leaders continue parroting that line, that irritating, interminable line that Israel has a right to defend itself, seemingly at the expense of everybody else's right to defend themselves, the rest of the world is seeing through this farce. 21 Arab and Islamic nations have now issued formal condemnations of Israel's brutal and unprovoked aggression against Iran to date. These countries emphasise that Iran's actions have remained proportionate and that it is Israel which has destabilised the region by striking civilian infrastructure in Tehran. So despite Israel's best efforts to prevent reporting on the destruction within its borders, footage continues to reach the global public. Independent news outlets, activists, citizen journalists have turned every smartphone into a broadcast station. From the burned-out Weizmann Institute to the missile craters in Gilat, the truth cannot be contained by Netanyahu's diktat, and his authority is falling to bits as a result. Netanyahu's disinformation campaign is failing. The world can see that Israeli cities are burning. The world can see that military bases are being reduced to rubble. The world can see that the Israeli defense narrative, that it is a tiny nation under siege, is in tatters when it is responsible for initiating war with one of the most heavily armed nations in the region, and doing so all the while it is of course still committing genocide in Gaza, which we must not forget either. Iran's devastating and coordinated strikes on Israel have rewritten the power dynamics of the Middle East, because no longer can Israel assume its military supremacy provides it a blank check to engage in regional violence without consequence. And by having picked on the most powerful nation in the Middle East, they're being taught a harsh lesson that Netanyahu is wishing he would never have started, and he is desperate for US help to get him out of. Netanyahu, who pursued confrontation with Iran as a means to prop up his collapsing government and distract from the genocide in Gaza, has instead opened up the gates of hell. What was meant to be a surgical show of force has become an open-ended conflict with a regional power that has proven it can strike, cripple and warn with impunity, and is basically saying all the while that they're still only getting warmed up. Netanyahu has lost. He cannot win a forever war because you cannot have a forever war. Because he's losing assets, he's losing his own people, he's losing support. He cannot keep up the pace of the Iranian response to the Israeli strikes. Yet if he stops, he's also finished. It's just a question of how much of Israel is he going to take down with him before he's stopped. For more on the state of Israel's air defences collapsing under the fury of Iranian assault, check out this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, sort of spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people. I hope to catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.